Two brothers, in the company of their friends, went on a dive in the Devil Springs system, located in Florida. The daredevil younger brother decided to dive farther than the rest of the group until he got lost in the interconnecting tunnels. Will he find his way out before his dive gas runs out? The springs in Florida are truly amazing, especially for those who visit them often. One of these amazing places is called Ginnie Springs. It's connected to the Santa Fe River and stays at a comfortable 72 degrees Fahrenheit all year. People love to swim, snorkel, tube, and dive in its clear water. Inside Ginnie Springs, there's something called the Devil Spring system, which has 3 separate springs: Devil's Eye, Devil's Ear, and Devil Spring, also known as Little Devil. These springs produce almost 80 million gallons of water every day. Little Devil Spring is a narrow crack in the ground that goes down about 50 feet and is only 4 feet wide. Even though it's small and doesn't allow for much movement, it's a special place that's worth a quick visit. At the bottom of the crack, there are 2 very tiny caves, but neither of them goes very far inside the earth. The springs called Devil's Ear and Devil's Eye are connected to each other. This connection allows people to explore underground passages that are about 30,000 feet long, which is roughly the length of about 250 basketball courts. These 2 springs are linked by a narrow path that's too difficult for regular divers to navigate without special training. People who are trained to dive in caves can only explore the small, interesting space in Devil's Eye. The tight tunnel that leads out of this space connects to the main passage in Devil's Ear, which opens up into a bunch of different tunnels that branch out. The farthest someone has gone into these tunnels is about 4,300 feet. More people use Devil's Ear Spring for diving because it has a special area where trained divers can go into the cavern. But the strong flow of water from this spring, which is about as much as 30 million gallons per day, makes it a bit challenging for divers to enter. Walter Smith is the second child born to Mary and Robert Smith. Their family lived in Florida, but Walter lived with his older brother Oliver. What sets Walter apart is his bold and impulsive nature, which often drives him to take on risky adventures. He's gone on many daring adventures due to this spirit. Walter and Oliver both love swimming, which led them to develop an interest in cave diving. They bit by bit pursued their interest and soon became certified cave divers, fully trained to explore underwater caves. Before this particular dive at Devil's Spring system, Walter and Oliver had gone underwater 2 times to explore the cave system. However, this time they had a new plan in mind. They decided to have a diving weekend with 3 of their friends. The idea was to divide themselves into 2 smaller groups. Group A would include Walter, Oliver, and their friend Sam, while Group B would consist of Dave and William. When they arrived at the cave, everyone was getting ready for the dive. While they were preparing, they noticed another group of divers who were also getting ready to go underwater. Suddenly, they noticed that Walter was paying close attention to the other group of divers. These divers were talking about going in the direction of the Corn Flakes section of the cave, but they didn't intend to reach the far side, which is about 500 feet away. They just wanted to go halfway through. This was quite a bit farther than what Walter and his friends had originally planned for their dive. All of a sudden, Walter's thoughts changed and he decided he wanted to dive all by himself, without anyone else. The rest of his friends, on the other hand, still wanted to stick to their initial idea and go together in groups. Oliver tried to talk him out of it, but his attempt didn't work. So now, except for Walter, who was diving alone, the other friends split into 2 teams of 2 people each. They started their underwater exploration in the Devil's Eye section of the cave, which was chosen because it was a quicker and simpler way to get inside. Even though the Devil's Eye and Devil's Ear are close to each other, the second one is mainly used for training or just to change things up. The interesting part is that it doesn't really matter whether you enter through the Devil's Eye or the Devil's Ear, because the paths connect underwater quite soon in a big pathway called the gallery. After a while, they reach the gallery. Running alongside the gallery, there's a group of tunnels that are linked together, and these are called the catacombs. These are different from the other paths in the cave because they are not lined to guide you. This is on purpose because instructors want to give students the chance to practice running reels. They continued swimming ahead and reached the very end of the gallery. At that point, the cave took a sudden sharp turn to the right, and the divers had to carefully squeeze through a wide spot known as the lips. Once they got past the lips, they entered a big room that was quite spacious. On the opposite side of the room, the diving line goes through something called the keyhole. When they got to the keyhole, they descended from a depth of 70 feet to 90 feet. This dive was really exciting for them, and they spent some time looking around at the beautiful sights underwater. When it was time to head back, Oliver signaled Walter, trying to convince him to come along with them. But Walter was determined to keep exploring the Corn Flakes section. Even though his friends asked him to come with them, he wanted to go to that area. Reluctantly, the group had to leave him behind, but they made sure to tell him not to stay underwater for too long. Walter carried on with his dive, maneuvering his way through the twisty and short paths of the Corn Flakes section. He swam until he reached a point that was 500 feet on the opposite side of the Corn Flakes. Even at that distance, Walter decided he wanted to keep going. He went further and finally entered a room called the Junction Room. In this room, the cave branches off in different directions with other smaller paths. Walter decided to explore one of these paths, and he placed a little marker, which was a wooden clothespin, on the side of the path to show which way he would go when he returned. Sadly, there was a problem. The marker he put on the wall wasn't secure enough, and it ended up falling off. As Walter swam through this tunnel for a short distance, he eventually decided to turn back and swim in the direction he had come from. When he looked for the marker he had put on the wall earlier, he couldn't find it. Unfortunately, he ended up following the diving line in the wrong direction. Instead of going towards the exit, he actually went into another tunnel. He kept going in that direction for about 50 feet until he realized he was going the wrong way. He turned around to head back. His unexpected journey in the wrong direction used up a lot of the air he had in his diving tank. This made it difficult for him to have enough air left to swim back to the exit. While all this was happening, a lot of time passed, around 2 hours after they came up to the surface. Oliver and the others in the group started getting worried about Walter. They were especially concerned because the other group that had influenced Walter's choice to go deeper into the cave had already come back up. The group told the authorities about the situation, and even though rescue divers were on their way, they weren't arriving fast enough. Feeling desperate and anxious, Oliver and his friend Dave decided to dive back into the cave. They went in about 45 feet. As they swam further inside, they were met with an incredibly sad sight. Walter's body, lifeless. Oliver was shaken and trembling from the shock, so Dave had to try to calm him down. Since Oliver was scared, Dave held on to him and helped guide him toward the exit. By the time they reached the surface again, 2 rescue divers were already there. Dave gave them directions to where Walter's body was located. Once they brought out Walter's body and all his diving gear, the rescue team looked closely at his dive computer. From analyzing the information on it, they figured out that Walter had gone way too deep into the cave, more than 500 feet inside the Junction Room. The diver who was leading the recovery operation carefully studied what happened and came up with some important reasons that likely led to the accident. The first thing was that Walter's dive plan was too complicated and not very straightforward, which made him get lost for a while. Another reason was that he wasn't familiar with that specific part of the cave, where he got lost since he had not been there before. Lastly, Walter didn't manage his diving gas properly, which is very important for being safe underwater. All of these factors combined likely played a role in what happened to him. We would like to thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed watching, take a dive on the like and subscribe buttons and hit the bell icon so you get notified when we come back with another exciting cave diving story.